Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Liz Rossell. I'm a Senior Communications Officer with UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. I'd like to welcome you and thank you very much for coming this afternoon to a press conference by UNHCR and representatives from the private sector to discuss the absolutely pivotal role of the private sector in helping refugees and host communities. This press conference is taking place within the context of the Global Refugee Forum. So if I may, first of all, just make some brief introductions. Delighted to be joined by Tolga Unju, down on the far side of the podium, IKEA Retail Operations Manager of Inca Group. Next to him is Hamdi Ulukaya, the CEO of Chobani and founder of the Tent Partnership for Refugees. I'll skip over Dominique for the moment, and I will come to John Goodwin, who is the CEO of the Lego Foundation. And next to me is Joachim Reiter, who is the Group External Affairs Director at Vodafone. What we plan to do today is for each of the speakers to make some brief remarks as to why this issue is so important and what they are doing. And then, of course, we will open it up to question and answer. So if I may ask Dominic Hyde, who's the Director of External Relations at UNHCR, to begin the press conference. Dominic, over to you.
Thank you, Liz. Good afternoon, everybody. The Global Refugee Forum is a historic moment. One of our key messages is to say that every action counts and everyone counts. The forum is very much about a whole-of-society approach. We're looking to bring together refugees, civil society, the UN, and the private sector, and bringing them to the table to find solutions with and for refugees. And we're so excited because we at this point have over 100 companies and businesses that have joined the forum, and high-level representatives as well, joining, and not just joining, but also offering real commitments towards the cause. As you will hear today from my friends around the table, businesses are really influencing refugee inclusion through education, through jobs, and the power of entrepreneurship. Teaming up with refugees and, as I said, towards solutions. The private sector actors are also key to bringing clean energy, innovations, connectivity, financial services, health services, water, sanitation, and housing solutions. To help shine a spotlight on these and to talk about their own work for and with refugees, I'm delighted to be joined by Joachim, John, Hamdi, and Tolga. Over to all of you. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, if I could first of all ask Hamdi Ulukaya to speak. Hamdi, it's over to you.
Okay. Thank you. This is so cool to be here. Thank you, Dominic. I think she summarized it perfectly why we're here. I'm Hamdi Ulukaya. I'm the founder, CEO of Chobani and Tent Partnership for Refugees. It's a beautiful moment because seeing all these amazing brands and companies coming up, making commitment on these most alarming issues and topics that we're facing in humanity today. In my own experience, when I started Chobani in upstate New York, realized that there's a settlement city in town called Utica, where there are refugees from 19 different countries were having a hard time finding jobs. That also was very clear that even though they found a safe place to be, even though they had legal rights to work, even though they were surrounded by a lot of support, but without business forthcoming, they were still in the level of being refugees. Because job is extremely important for them to be part of society. While we were hiring, I started hiring these newly settled refugees into our factories, and I found out what magic was happening. When the minute they start working, that's the minute they stop being a refugee. Today at Chobani, we have 20% of our workforce are immigrants and refugees, and hundreds of them in both of our locations. It was so obvious to me that this is as simple as hiring someone to your own workforce as someone part of community, but what magnitude it does to someone on their family, on themselves, and moving forward. And we took this idea and formed 10th Partnership for Refugees in 2016 with few companies in Davos. Today, I'm honored to say that we have over 100. Today is the 100th multinational company. H&M joined our partnership, committing same level of hiring, helping refugees, or using their supply chain to help refugees to have access to work. From a few years ago to today, this was in the hands of big UN organizations, which they do amazing work, or the governments. Today, we are in a place where businesses and brands are forthcoming and saying we stand for the refugees, we stand for humanity, we stand for making things better for all humankind. And it was very obvious when we made a last trip to Colombia a couple of months ago, an enormous amount of refugees coming from Venezuela to all the Latin American countries. And as dire as it is in Colombia, as stressful it is, I was amazed to see how people received them, Colombians, how government made them possible for them to have an access to work or the public services, and how businesses and employees of all those businesses and brands forthcoming and let them be part of their companies. These type of examples are spreading around the world, despite the fact there are political landscape out there that might be against it. But the companies, people, communities who are coming up, doing the right things for their children are going to be remembered forever in these buildings. And I'm honored to be here with my colleagues here who are making amazing commitments, who are leading brands like IKEA, like Lego, like Vodafone, like H&M. And through the business partnership, I'm honored to say that this year we have 44 multinational companies joined our partnership. We made commitment over 12,000 people for work and hundreds of thousands of new entrepreneurs and small businesses getting access from companies. Looking forward to today's evening, I congratulate UNHCR, their hard work, their amazing work, and I'm looking forward to collaborate with everyone in business community to make this issue to go away once for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hamdi, for those words. If I may now pass the floor to Joaquin Reiter to talk about what Vodafone is doing. Joaquin, over to you.
Thank you very much, and let me thank Hamdi for speaking on behalf of many of us in terms of how we approach the issue. What I wanted to say here is first, we're really, really pleased with the way that UNHCR has cajoled and brought us to the table. And I'm here to announce the expansion of an existing program that we're doing with UNHCR. But let me explain why, because there were two questions that the moderator asked. Why is this important? What are we doing? On the first question, why it's important, in the case of Vodafone and Vodafone Foundation, we are very focused on the question and our belief of every child having the right to quality education. The reality is that 4 million refugee children today lack access to education. This runs the risk of not only being a lost generation, but it's a loss of a massive amount of opportunity for every child that is forgotten in this process. Education is key to ensure that these children are not destined to a future of poverty and marginalization that many times come with growing up in a refugee camp. So in the case of Vodafone, what we have done since 2013 is developing something called Instant Network Schools. This Instant Network School basically is a quality digital education platform. It's a hub for connected education that we bring into refugee camps. What we're announcing today is the expansion of this partnership that we've had with UNHCR for the last 5 years to add an additional 250 currently under-resourced and under-serviced classrooms and move them into becoming innovative digital learning hubs across 6 countries. So we're moving from a situation of 36 schools today, in Kenya, Tanzania, as well as in the Democratic Republic of Congo, to in the future close to 300 schools, covering some 500,000 pupils by 2025. Now, for us, this is a unique and very innovative partnership. It's one which goes very, very deep in terms of the support of Vodafone up to this group CEO, Nick, who would have loved to be here. In the case of Vodafone's contribution into this partnership with UNHCR, we bring in technology, for which we actually have instant classroom. So it's a school in a box with tablets, laptop, projector, 3G connectivity, and the like. That is then linked to a host of educational local content, so that kids taking the curriculum will be able to graduate against the national curriculum, and therefore have a higher likelihood of becoming productive participants in the society that they live in. Second pillar we bring is connectivity, so we zero-rate auto connectivity, make sure that they get full access to all educational material for free. And just to underline the importance of access to internet as part of an educational journey, is that of course in many in the underserviced and under-resourced schools, children today have actually a problem even getting access to written materials. Through internet, you can get access to anything that has ever been written. And that's a huge transformational journey. Third thing we're bringing is people on the ground. So I have with me in the back colleagues who have devoted much of the last few years of traveling to a refugee camp, setting up these schools, helping the teachers, actually bring the teachers on terms of their own ICT literacies to make sure that we have these dynamic effects, network effects into the camps. And that level of volunteers that we have in Vodafone is a testimony to the strong sentiment of commitment that all Vodafone staff have. And I'm really, really proud for those core members of the team that has been working side by side with UNHCR in the refugee camps. So there are some impacts already on this, and that's why we feel comfortable of expanding this much more. ICT literacy has already increased 61% in where we have deployed it, 125% for teachers, which is key in terms of these dynamic effects. Of course, already anecdotally, we have kids now in refugee camps going for tertiary education, which means that they're actually we had the CEO in August being to Kakuma, where there was a kid sitting for his accounting degree in a mud hut, literally trying to online meet his accounting standards to have an international career as an accountant, which is a remarkable change that comes with connectivity. So these type of stories abound once we have deployed it, and we hope that the scaling up of this initiative will bring that opportunity for more children. Now, my plea, if I may have one in the end, is we're doing this together with UNHCR, and we are really proud to move from around 85,000 kids today to up to 500,000 by 2025. But there are 4 million refugee children that don't have education and don't have access to education. And we're, of course, keen to partner with anyone who's interested in deploying this more at scale, so that by joint forces, and I have Lego next to me, we will do some things together and some things separately, but together we need to close the educational gap to make sure that all children, no matter where you were born and whether you were unfortunate enough to be born in a refugee camp, has the right to shape their life as the best seem appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joaquin, for those words and the strong commitment to children's education. You mentioned that you're sitting next to Lego, so if I may ask John Goodwin of the Lego Foundation to say some words as well.
Thank you, and thanks very much to the UNHCR for organising this opportunity for us to share the private sector view, and to my fellow panelists as well. We are currently in a situation, as already been referenced, where millions of children are displaced, and the average period that many of them will be displaced for can be 10 years, and that can be a complete childhood. At the Lego Foundation, we're particularly focused on the early years of education because it provides such an essential foundation for the trajectory of those individuals. And we feel it's imperative that we do all that we can to provide those children with the start that they need, both to overcome the adversity that they've experienced and put them on a trajectory for a successful, thriving life. So this year, the Lego Foundation is awarding a $100 million grant to a consortium that's been led by the International Rescue Committee to work alongside host country governments in order to improve education outcomes for an estimated 800,000 pre-primary and primary school children living in refugee settings in East Africa. We'll be doing this through supporting 10,000 educators and 170,000 caregivers, all of whom are going to receive training and professional development on how to engage in learning through play with children who find themselves in these adverse circumstances. By working with teachers in the host communities, we're going to be focusing on innovation to ensure that there's a systemic and lasting impact, and then sharing these approaches across agencies for future replication and for scaling as well. We're really optimistic that this new innovation is truly going to bring hope for a bright future for all of the children that are touched by the work of the consortium.
Thank you very much, John. And if I may now pass the floor to Tolga Unju, who's down at the other end, from IKEA and Inga Group.
Yeah, thank you so much, and it's a true honor to be here, sitting next to all of you, and a big thanks to UNHCR also for organizing the first ever Global Refugee Forum. And it's a special honor to be here representing the whole value chain and our commitment on the work we do for refugees. For us, it's very important. We are extremely driven by our vision at IKEA, which is to create a better everyday life for the many people. And year 2016, when the refugee crisis came much closer to the markets where we are operating, we saw that some of our stores and co-workers, based on the vision that we have, but also our super strong commitment on inclusiveness and equality, started to take action and initiatives that inspired us. These initiatives were to create training programs, language programs for refugees in their market, to increase the employability of the refugees, to give them a chance to come into the society, be part of the society, and contribute to the local economy. At the same time, we also invested in the homes where the refugees were staying, and turning them from cold homes to a place to call home and make it a bit more cozy and warm and welcoming. And also we started a collaboration with the Jordan River Foundation, where we collaborate with refugees in the camp and take the most out of the talent that sits there in their artistic wavery or other skills in design. And we created a collection. And we started to sell this in 5 of our countries in a small scale. And then we realized that this is not enough. We can do more, we have to do more, and we will encourage others to do more as well. So that's why today we are extremely proud to say that we have decided on the following pledge. So first one is that by 2022, we will scale out the program that was started in few countries to include all our countries, 30 countries that we operate in. 300 IKEA stores will participate in this. And we hope that at least 2,500 refugees in this market will have a chance to increase their employability and get closer to the local community where they are. We also have committed, together with our colleagues in the supply chain, to scale out the collection and the work that we have started off with the River Foundation in Jordan. And that is going from 5 countries to all the IKEA Inca Group countries, so covering 30 different countries. And this will increase the first 100 women that worked in this refugee camp, helping us creating these beautiful designs, to 400 women, and hopefully we will continue increasing that as well. And then our dear friends in the IKEA Foundation is also committing to yet another 100 million euro in grants in the coming 5 years, for programs that help refugees in their hosting communities, improving incomes and becoming more self-reliant. So from all three aspects in our supply chain, we feel extremely proud of the work we are doing. But we also say there is another part where we are committing to do, and that is to participate in changing the narrative in the societies around refugees. We want this narrative to be a positive narrative. These are friends, colleagues, and tomorrow it can be myself, it can be you, it can be our children or grandchildren. I think we owe the refugees today to make sure that the narrative throughout the whole world becomes a positive narrative. It is good business to do good, and we at IKEA have the fortune to think in generations, so we are super willing to invest in making sure that this narrative will change, even if it takes time, and we are extremely proud of being here today and sharing this with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tolga, and thank you to all of you for giving such compelling and impassioned overviews of what you're doing and why you're doing it, with words that you don't often hear resonate in this room, like magic, home, play, children, and transformational. So thank you very much. What I'd like to do now is open it up to questions. If you have a question, I'd be grateful if you could identify yourself, identify your media outlet, and if you have your question directed to a specific person, please indicate. Otherwise, we can open it up generally. So any questions?
Yeah, Catherine Fiancon-Bokonga, France 24. Yes, if you take this, you will be able to listen to and hear my question properly. This is a question first for the gentleman at the end. I think it's IKEA, is that correct? Yes. Thank you. You mentioned that you're active. Okay, here you have these little things, volume. You push 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. So you spoke about 5 countries in which you are active. I would like you to mention which countries they are, because you several times say that you are active in 5 countries. So which are these countries? And okay, I don't ask you the list of the 30 countries in which you would, but maybe you could be a bit more precise about the regions. And I'd like also to address a question to Mr. Goodwin from Lego Foundation about the children. You seem to be focused on children based in refugee camps in Eastern Africa. Why not in the other parts of Africa? And a question to all of you, are you focusing more on kids that are in the English-speaking education system and not in the French-speaking? I know that there's a program in DRC, French-speaking country. So I would like to know if it's a problem also about the fact that some are French-speaking and other English-speaking. Thank you.
Okay, so Tolga, do you want to address the questions for you?
Thank you so much for the question. So the first 5 countries that took the leading role is Sweden, US, Spain, Switzerland, and did I forget one? Sweden, Spain, Switzerland, US, Italy. And now we are scaling out to all the countries that we as Inca Group, one of the franchise in the IKEA ecosystem, and all the 30 countries, which I would say is covering North America, most part of Europe, and big parts of the Asian countries.
Yeah, we're focusing with this grant on East Africa primarily for 2 reasons. One is that we feel that there's been long-standing crises in East Africa that have been largely forgotten. Many of the refugees have been displaced for upwards of 30 years. And we really want to make an intervention to help the children that find themselves in those environments. And then East Africa also, through Ethiopia and Uganda, which will be two of the countries that we'll be focusing on, are actually the countries in Africa with the largest number of refugees. So it was a natural place for us to start in the context of learning how to develop the solutions to meet the needs of pre-primary and primary school children in those environments. So it's nothing to do with the English or French language. It's purely where the refugees are.
I'm sorry, I think that Vodafone had a program, yes, is that correct, in DRC?
Yeah, so we're currently in 3 countries, so Kenya, Tanzania, and DRC. I would say that the challenge is not one of language. The challenge is one of ensuring that you have relevant local content for the education platform, which is why we're working so much with partnership. In other words, we're not necessarily always developing the content ourselves, rather we were looking for partners, and ultimately you need to align with the ministries of education so that the education you provide is one which is fully aligned with the national curriculum. And that is always a challenge from the expansion point of view. But just to be very clear, when we're moving from 36 schools now to 300, we have a footprint in Africa which is English-speaking, French-speaking, and Portuguese-speaking, by the way, in Mozambique. And since we're doing it with the partnership of UNHCR, it is together with the partnership, it's for them to tell us where they want us to deploy more. We have said in the expansion up to 300, we are prepared also to discuss with UNHCR going beyond where Vodafone exists. Now that, to be clear, involves some certain challenges because we will then have to find a local telecom partner who will zero rate the content. But Vodafone is the largest mobile operator in the world with respect to partner markets and in terms of geographical scope with all our partnerships. So we think this is a bridge we will be able to collectively cross together with UNHCR. But just to be very clear, the key issue is not the language. The key issue is the localization of the content to make sure that whatever a student is studying is relevant in terms of its qualifications under the national educational system.
And could you please repeat, you said that if I took well notes that today you have 85,000 and you aim to reach how many millions?
Half a million, 500,000.
500,000.
2025, yes. So we have a scale-up program together with UNHCR, where we have 36 today. Then we will scale up. Basically, it's a 7-fold increase in the number of schools. We will have a team that is deployed pretty much every week into building new schools. This is a team that actually originally came from dealing with national catastrophes. So when there is a national catastrophe, Vodafone will deploy teams, no matter where it happens in the world, to make sure that connectivity comes up again, not least to help aid workers, but also to allow those that are affected to communicate to their loved ones. And this skill has allowed us to enter into refugee camp with our own staff in a comfortable way, because obviously these are quite tough circumstances, and we have trained people for those circumstances, partly because we started off working on natural catastrophes.
Sorry, last follow-up on that one. Are you working also, I suppose, with ITU? That is part of the emergency connecting system. They have that emergency teams in the world when there are disasters, no?
No, I have Ocean there and another colleague there who actually are deployed constantly to national catastrophes. But my understanding, just to be very clear, there are a number of partnerships in this field, and one of the questions that we are dealing with is the fact that it gets crowded. So what our colleagues have done when they fly in, for example, as of late to Caribbean, is that they work with the local government to identify the area to be deployed in. And it's for the national government together with international organizations to figure out which telecom operator comes into certain areas. So I think there's a question to be asked about the coordination of this in the future. But so far, we have found that the needs are so great that there's plenty of space for everyone. ITU as an organization, as far as I know, are not doing the overall coordination of this. This is much more to do with the instant natural catastrophe response, which, in all frankness, I, at least personally, have not encountered ITU playing a prominent role in.
Okay, at the back, the gentleman there.
Stéphane Bussard, Le Temps newspaper. I would be very interested in hearing from the representative of the private sector. You have had programs, as you, Mr. from Vodafone, Lego, in Africa and things like that, going on for some years. That said, I would be interested to hear you about the fact that, yeah, the Global Compact goes back to the years 2000, and why did it take so much time, in a way, for those kind of private-public partnerships to be put in place? I know now it's all the rage, but why did it take so much time? And why is it now so trendy, in a way, to be involved in private-public partnership? I guess the SDG, the Agenda 2030, plays a role as well, but I would like to have your take on this. Thank you.
I think given it's a question about public and private, it possibly needs two people at least to answer it. So I don't know who would like to start. Yeah.
So, just to be very clear, in the case of Vodafone Group, we actually only joined Global Compact in July last year, or actually this year. So we're newcomers to the UN Global Compact. We have had subsidiaries around the world that have been members, but as Vodafone Group, we just joined. That has not, in any shape or form, precluded us from doing activities in developing countries for a very, very long time. In the case of Vodafone Foundation, we've been active for 30 years, and we've dispersed around $1 billion in developing countries for development aid type of projects. Specifically, in the case of the two themes that we work on, which is education and health, we've been active in many countries for a long time. But also as a business, and just to underline, when you refer to public-private partnerships, I think the most successful public-private partnership, arguably in the world, is mobile money, which started, M-Pesa started as a DFID subsidized program that then was rolled out by Vodafone through its subsidiary Safaricom in Kenya. So people tend to forget that something as important as mobile money, and M-Pesa is today larger than PayPal, something as important as mobile money that has lifted 2% of the Kenyan households out of absolute poverty, that has ensured that almost 200,000 women have found productive work in the formal sector as opposed to informal sector. Something as important as that started actually as a development project under a PPP model. So as Vodafone, we have worked with public-private for a very, very long time. What we're just talking about now is the specific activity we're doing with UNHCR, but we have a whole slate of development activities that go way back, and that's irrespective of whether we had been members of Global Compact or not.
I think, if I may, you point out really something really interesting is the interest of private sectors and amazing brands coming into this alarming issue of refugees is something recent. I don't know if it's cool yet, but I hope it becomes really, really cool. As a CEO of a company, a founder, it wasn't until 2016 I made a trip to this town and met the official at UNHCR that understand the magnitude of this humanitarian crisis. So we still have a lot of work to do to tell the stories of this, how enormous this topic is, this issue is, how alarming it is, and how important it is for generations to come. And isolating this from the private sector is the worst thing we can do. We've done a lot of market studies in each countries, in Europe, in South Africa, South America, in North America, as tent. The public awareness of this topic is not until some movement happens, right? Movement only happens in the only small percentage. The vast majority of the refugees are living nearby the countries all these conflicts are. And hosting of countries are mostly underdeveloped or developing countries. The effect of this topic on that hosting countries is enormous and affects the public opinion there too. So what also affects the public opinion is the brands and companies and their view and their employees, and bringing this topic to greater alarmment, like my colleague Tolga said, is extremely important. But what we have to make it proven that this is also good business, like Tolga said. It's good business from so many different angles, where you can bring this topic into center of your attention and center of your operation, where you can see impact being made immediately. And when it does happen from every angle, and I'm focusing on the employment perspective, which I employ 16 different nationalities, 19 different nationalities, 16 different languages. The impact it does in the work environment in your company, what it does when it comes to your morale of your own employees and attracting talents, because we know the youngs, especially millennials of the earth, this world, they stand in the right place when it comes to the topic of refugees and humanity. At the same time, if you look at entrepreneurship innovations, when it comes from this population a lot. And when it comes to what it means to the hosting community, the small businesses, entrepreneurship, and if it's supported in the right way, what it means for the country. So these are all positive things, can be led by the brands and companies. And if it does, it's faster, more innovative, and it does affect, like Tolga said, in the public opinion, when it comes in from trusted brands like around this table. I hope it becomes the coolest thing to do. I really do. And public-private partnership is extremely needed because we are good at certain things and we are not good at certain things. But this level of communication needs to be simplified, it needs to be faster and responded immediately, and the collaboration has to be in the highest place because we don't want to repeat when somebody else does. And we do not need bureaucracy when we have millions of people are suffering in camps, in cities, on roads. We have no time for BS. We do have no time for anything. We just have to start working. And I think everyone around this table can say that it comes from the passion of the employees of each companies. They truly care and they truly believe on making the world a better place for humanity, for every human being. And hopefully this is just the beginning. And more companies come involved in every part of this world. I think we can move the needle and we can make this problem go away faster.
Just a follow-up question. What are the benefits the private sector is concretely looking for in a partnership with the UNHCR, for example? I guess it's not only a question of image. It goes much beyond that.
What we, from the Lego Foundation, get through the collaboration is a sharing of insights, a sharing of knowledge, the ability to tap into different strengths and leverage those effectively across the massive need that's present around the world. Collaboration is a natural behavior set in the private sector, and we believe that we're more than happy to partner with UNHCR or UNICEF in that regards, because we think it's the way to be most effective.
Are there any further questions? No, I don't see any hands. Well, we have a tiny bit of time. I know we're very tight for time, but I just wonder if anyone wants to make any final remarks. There's so much to cover in this whole issue, but I don't know if anybody wants to add anything. No? John?
I mean, we talked a bit about the private sector. I think also an important thing that hopefully you can take out from all of the representatives here is that we're looking to very much change the narrative, and all of you can play an important role within that as well. We see this as a way in which we can change the dynamic around how society views refugees and how they view the circumstances that they find other human beings in around the world. And I know I speak on behalf of my fellow panelists, but we're all very much committed to changing that agenda to one of hope, and that, as already been mentioned, we really need to lean in and all do our part in order to change that narrative.
maybe I just have a last question. Was actually for the private sector the Agenda 2030 a big incentive?
So I was on the other side of the table. I was on her side. I was in the UN when we established the SDGs. I think what is wonderful from a private sector point of view, now having crossed the aisle over to the other side with the Sustainable Development Goals, is first is the universality of it. The second is, and this was a bit tricky for some companies to perhaps to understand this framework of working, but the reality is the upfront recognition that no actor will alone be able to shoulder or be able to capably handle the Sustainable Development Agenda. I think that's a very humble and important message when the Sustainable Development Goals were established. That was, if you want, a call for action also to the private sector, which frankly I think all of our companies here are responding to. If governments would have turned around in the establishment of the final draft of this and said, and by the way, we're going to fix this ourselves together with the international organizations, you would probably have, on single issues, you would have found a lot of partnerships. But in terms of a more comprehensive framework for actually reaching out and working together, you wouldn't have had it. So, I mean, the investment gap for most countries with respect to Sustainable Development Goals is massive, which means that you need to tap into all sources of funding, all sources of expertise, all sources of innovation. And I think as a private sector, that call for action has been very, very important in forcing us to step forward and be able to actually offer what we do have as available resources and capabilities. So I think part of what you're seeing here is also the ultimate effect of the UN system and its members to be very clear that these are so important, these goals, and we're not going to be able to pull them off ourselves. So all actors need to join the conversation. And at least from a Vodafone point of view, I can say that that was something, while we struggle with understanding fully how each target and goals will work and the interrelationship between them, and we're still in a journey of fully understanding that call for action, that invitation to be around the table is something that we have welcomed very much.
Yeah, okay. Dominic?
Well, thank you to all our partners. There are over 70 million forcibly displaced people around the world. And unless we come together with the private sector, with innovation, with ideas that come out of the box, with cool ideas, we're simply not going to solve this challenge. And these are not just challenges, there's so many opportunities as well. And this is very much what the Global Forum is about. This is what the Global Compact on Refugees was about. And it's about making that step change. We heard today that in some cases refugees stay over, we know it's over 20 years, in some cases over 30 years. And this is where the SDGs also come into play. We've heard about inclusion this afternoon. Inclusion is key. Whether you're a development organization in the UN, you need to be including refugees and displaced people within your response, whether you're civil society, whether you're the media. We need your help as well in terms of speaking out on behalf of refugees, with refugees, and raising their voice. And we also need the private sector to come together with us in including this group of people. Thank you so much.